terms are sociology, anthropology, and psychology. So after that sort of period, after the U.S. has been established a little bit, sociology.
Oh, okay.
I think it's that part of the board.
Oh, really? Yeah. Both boards are
Might be more computer. Right, so sociology, anthropology, and psychology. Who knows what sociology means? Somebody new, somebody new. I know you already talked.
So the study of being social.
Yes, this is true. Adrian, right? Marcos. Where's Adrian?
I'm right here.
Ah, okay. You both have the curly hair thing on top of different colors. Okay, Marcos. What? Right, studying society. You're close.
Study of
How about anthropology? Jimmy. Study of humanity? Yep. Especially over a long period of time. Psychology. Oh, you are, Eric.
Study how people think.
Study what?
How people think.
Right, how people behave, right? Right, so these terms become really popular. Someone who is an infamous anthropologist is Karl Marx. Karl Marx. Karl's with a K, Marx with an X on the end. Why are other people talking? Well, Marx's theory, but the man is ends with an X.
No, that's T.
That's his theory. You are a Marxist, but Marx wrote it.
Oh, duh. I never heard of Marx.
Karl Marx. He wrote this little book, called the Communist Manifesto. Manifesto. You're right.
Yeah.
Communist Manifesto. He says that society is just simply a struggle between people who have, people who have not. The haves and the have-nots, right? We're all struggling. And that life is really just a sort of battle to gain things. Life is just this battle to gain things. He talks a lot about class struggles, right? This is what really influences who? Who? Lenin. People always do the same person. Lenin, which then lends its hand to. Lenin lends its hand to. No one finds it funny, huh? Yeah, there's a big name I'm going for. Thank you. Right, that there's ideas of class struggles. Right, Hitler uses this Communist Manifesto to kind of say that the people of less power, the people who are poorer, I'm not going to get the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, that we should use that, the proletariat, right, should use power and overthrow people who have a lot of stuff. The problem with Hitler is he didn't have much and he got a lot and then he wanted to keep it all. Or at least he wanted to keep it for the blonde-haired Germans. Alright. Alright, so yes. Marx writes a lot about the idea of revolution as well, which is sort of how Lenin leads a revolution. Hitler is under Lenin. Eventually, he takes over. Lenin, L-E-N-I-N. Lenin uses the ideas in the Communist Manifesto to take over. Peter. Pack your stuff up and come on back. Yes.
Now do the same ideas, right?
I can't hear you.
Now do the same ideas
Not the same exact, because the idea of class struggles, yes. Mao has a different variation on sort of how revolution should be and how that works out.
How do you supposed to really want one of the chances for
Alright, next. The next.
Sorry, what does Lenin use again?
He uses the Communist Manifesto to rally people for a revolution.
How does Hitler use based on the
I'm sorry?
How does Hitler use?
Alright, if you are not the one asking a question, you need to be quiet. Okay, go ahead.
How does Hitler use Lenin's example in the Communist Manifesto?
Because that revolution kind of galvanizes him, and he uses that as an example. The idea that Hitler originally had is right, that we should be communists. Now Lenin doesn't actually end up putting a communism in place, right? But the same concept influenced both. Both just go a different direction. Yes?
Isn't that Hitler was closer to communism after World War I? And then after he rose to power, he built it in communism?
Yes. And that was what he was supposed to be doing. The idea was that he was going to have this revolution and eliminate that sort of class struggle. But when he gets up there, right, he's a very powerful leader. I mean, there are people who well, this is a sidebar, but there are people who discuss whether or not he really wanted to do that, or whether he was really using that as an example so that he could come to power, right? He was just inflamed over World War I because the Germans, lost a lot of things because of what happened in that war, and so it was supposed to be, them taking back power. And he realized that he had to rally against a certain group of people, and so the unfortunate ones was the Jewish population. It worked for a while, but very wrong. All right, let's talk about existentialism. Existentialism. Are you with me?
Yeah, sorry, he needed a schedule.
E-X-I-S-T. E-N-T. I-A-L-I-S-M. Alright, existentialism. Yes.
Is it a new era? Or is it still under the American?
This is a new period of thinking. A different type of thinking. Roughly the same area. You know who the author is. Existentialism. Right, they say that there are problems going on in the world. Existentialism pops up around World War I. Right, is when it really gains popularity. I should never say that anything pops up at a certain time. This is when it gains popularity. It's around World War I. Okay. It's very concerned about, people can exist without being concerned for other people. And yes, there are problems in the world, but we're not necessarily responsible for those problems. One of the more infamous philosophers in this time period is Nietzsche. N-I-E.
Bam!
Yeah, you need to have an S in this.
Where?
With a Z and C.
That always gets me.
Alright, Nietzsche. Nietzsche. Alright, I don't know why people are talking. They should not be.
Frederick Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. He says that the world is nihilist. N-I-L-I. Says the world is nihilist. But he says there's no... Nihilist. That means that sort of all values deconstruct themselves, right? All values deconstruct themselves. In other words, right, there is no real high power. There's no high value. He essentially says, there's a famous quote, God is dead. Because to him, for most people, the highest power of all, or value is God. So he says, none of that. Business, there's no God. God is dead. There's a famous verse that says, God says, hey Nietzsche, you were dead. That there is no higher power. No higher value. The people should just do what they want to do. That ethics have been created just to maintain power. He thinks that we just need to be able to do whatever it is we want to do. No obligations. To live for ourselves. You can see why people have a problem with this. Now Nietzsche is a very complicated concept. I could do a whole lecture on Nietzsche alone. But just know that he thinks the term God is dead will let you understand what he means. There's no higher value. Do what you want. Drew.
Would he be an anarchist or like?
Well, he doesn't really believe that there needs to be a government, so he can't really be an anarchist. Because an anarchist assumes that you overthrow and you have no government. He just thinks that we don't need anything.
It's more like a self, like a personal,
Right.
not a whole government.
People act with will. Like he believes that our will is what will direct us.
Self-control powers.
Maybe. As far as he's concerned, you might have it, you might not. Things will work out in the end. Is sort of how he thinks it'll be. And if it doesn't, well then I guess that person decided probably shouldn't have been here. Alright. The next really popular set of stuff we're going to talk about is the modern and postmodern period. So we get into what we would consider nowadays, which is really like the 40s, the 50s through today. Modern versus in the postmodern period. A lot of philosophers are in this period. Lots of people get lumped into this time frame. Okay? Most of this is concerned with ideas of causation and reason and power during these two sections, two groups of philosophers. There was a time where people say someone's clearly a modernist or a postmodernist. They have since come out in the last probably 5 to 10 years since it's very unclear who would really be a modernist or a postmodernist because they kind of switch later on, so that's why I kind of put them together. One of the more famous philosophies in this time frame is critical legal studies, which is the study of the justice system, which they basically say that the justice system ain't so just. The legal system really isn't all that just. Another popular concept during this that's a modern theory, well, it was about 5 years ago, the critique of statism. This is where group anarchy kind of pops from. Critique of statism. And that the state, i.e. the government, they're not, there are people who should hold power and said they're oppressive. So the idea is we should overthrow all government and have no government. My favorite, one or two of my favorite philosophy authors is called in this modern postmodern time frame is Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault, who is a man, not a woman. French. There, put a U before the L. Michel Foucault. He writes a ton of stuff about power and knowledge, right? Foucault is concerned about social context of power. Social context of power. He says that we, within our own group, regulate ourselves, right? We have self-regulation in our society because we do that with ourselves. He writes a lot of stuff. Again, I could talk to you for like 2 hours about Foucault. And at some point I'm going to talk to you for a long period about Foucault, because he's one of my favorite writers. I've pretty much read everything he's ever written. He introduces this idea of biopower. Right? So if you're looking to read more, biopower comes from Michel Foucault. Another really famous biopower writer is Carl Schmitt. Carl's with a C this time. Schmitt, S-C-H-M-I. Carl Schmitt. Right? He talks about biopower as well. And he says that, Foucault thinks biopower is probably a bad thing. Carl Schmitt says, and the government's probably a bad thing, Schmitt says that biopower is both good and bad, but we need the government to control things because we have enemies. Right? So Schmitt says we have enemies in the world, and we need the government, or a strong power, to control and protect us from those enemies. We need the government to protect us from those enemies. Yes?
What is biopower?
Biopower is like this. Do you drive?
No, not yet.
Stand up. Okay, go ahead and sit down. That's biopower.
Oh, okay, so like...
That you do things because there's an expectation you should. The most famous example is if you're driving, there's no cars around, and there's a red light, you stop.
Stop sign. No cars around, you stop.
Right. Right, because biopower is sort of the concept of, we know that there's a power source there and we listen to the rules, so it's the power between individuals. I'm really skimming over things now because we have another lecture, so I'm just kind of throwing the time frames out there. We're going to come back to all the power stuff, probably next week. So those of you who are here for week 2, you'll get to see one of my best lectures. Many people have seen me do the power lecture, and I love it. That other famous person in this time that you'll hear a lot from, and I'm just hitting, there are lots of people, please understand this, but I'm hitting the major players, is Giorgio Agamben. Giorgio Agamben. Now this tells you anything, on these notes here, I just have a note that says see teaching files. I have another 12 pages of Giorgio Agamben. Okay? Agamben, he also writes about power. Right? But Giorgio Agamben says that sovereign power, right, the state, is bad. Okay, so Schmitt sort of says they're necessary. Agamben says bad. Right? That they create the rules. And so people in power can always change the rules so that what they do is lawful. You saw this after 9/11. The Patriot Act is the greatest example that exists of biopower gone bad. Yes, I said gone bad. Schmitt would say the Patriot Act is an example of biopower gone smart. Alright, yeah. Yes. Because we know things, because it does things like allows the government to listen to our phone calls, to check our library records, to put cameras everywhere, to track us, to require identification everywhere we go so they know where we are, right? It's the idea that we know it's sovereign biopower, so that the government always knows where we are and can always know what we're doing. You know the Big Brother is always watching. I didn't even talk about Orwell. I'll talk about that forever. Right? The idea that Big Brother is watching would make us behave, because you don't ever know where they are.
like jail.
Right. These people are influenced by bestsellers. Okay. So rather than this have been time frames, right, you do see how each one sort of builds or takes another idea a little bit further. Okay, that's essentially what philosophy does. So I'm telling you, there's no right or wrong philosophy for you to have. There's no right or wrong person. I mean, everybody prefers a particular person. You can probably tell who I like just from the way I react to them. Okay. But instead, philosophy builds upon itself. So one person introduces an idea and people extend that idea. Or they respond to that idea and say it's right or it's wrong. Philosophy is a beautiful example of debate. Maybe they don't always sit down with each other. That's not true. There's some famous dialogue between some really famous philosophers, especially in the postmodern period, where they sit down and just take each other on about their philosophies, and it's awesome. Okay. But the idea is they all sort of learn from one another, and they have refutations from one another, and they each have a different way. So debate is never going to get you to the T capital truth. The only thing that I know, I've been doing debate since I was 14, I'm 37. I am not ashamed to admit it. I like to think I'm still quite young and energetic when it comes to debate. What do we think?
Yes. I mean, look forward to it.
Right.
You have a long ways to go.
That's right, I do. He's like 60. I'm good. Okay. The only thing I have come to know in the last 20 years plus of debate is that I know nothing. Okay. And this sort of lecture, this is why we talk about it, we have you all together, right? Do public forum debaters always debate philosophy? No. But it's good knowledge base to have, so that you get to the end point, that you get the point. You can continually learn. Everything's debatable. Everything extends from itself. And philosophy is one of the most beautiful examples of that I've ever seen. And there's a ton of things to know. But do you see how some of these philosophies are the basis of our government? Right? Some of these become the basis for our economic system. Some of these things produced World War I and World War II. Civil Wars. The rights movement, the feminist movement. These are the major tenets that influence those. Right? And there's thousands of authors underneath that. Okay, so I like to do this sort of overview, and I usually give myself 3 hours to do it. Okay. I was